Hello there, welcome to this video about PPAs and how to use them more effectively both in your personal development but also in your workplace. Typically you're landing on this video as a result of having your PPA done with us. Hopefully you've been impressed by the accuracy of the PPA. Hopefully you've been impressed with the debrief and how you might be able to use the PPA results that came back to you personally, but quite often people are left wondering, what does that mean in terms of how that translates into teams and into the business as a whole? And this short video should help you to understand that in a little bit more detail. So the first thing that we'd like you to do is just stop the video and go and get your PPA if you would. You can see on the left hand side of the screen here we've got your PPA. If you've got that to hand, that'd be wonderful because we're going to pause 3 or 4 times during the video and use it. On the right hand side you might be part of an organisation that's had the luxury of doing team reports as well. Most organisations in our experience, if they've done a number of PPAs with people, they work those through into a team report. So you might need to get hold of the team report for your organisation, and you might have that to hand somewhere, or you might need to go get that from somebody within your organisation, your HR lead or whoever it is. If you could get those 2 documents ready for this video, that would be amazing. And if you've only got your PPA to hand, then that's equally brilliant. Just want to take a couple of moments just reminding you of the DISC profiling, if that's okay. We know that you've seen the video. The video's here again on that QR code. If you snap the QR code and want to remind yourself of what DISC stands for, then please do that. It's a more detailed explanation, but I'm just going to take a couple of minutes just reminding you of what DISC stands for. If you remember, it's dominance, influence, steadiness and compliance on the right hand side here. Dominance, as the name suggests, high D people tend to be more dominant, more driving, more forceful, competitive, assertive. Stereotypically leaders who are more dominant, although that's not always the case. Below the line, we've got people who are more followers than leaders, a little bit quieter, more unassuming, mild-mannered, non-demanding. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just different people for different roles, different places. So that's the D, dominance. I stands for influence. And this is all about people skills. Above the line, we tend to have the extroverts who are good with words. They're communicative, they're friendly, classically salespeople. Below the line, more introverted I's, more thoughtful, probing, reflective. And as we know, we can act outside of these different profiles. I think, if I've done a debrief with you, I've probably shared that I'm a low I. I'm an introverted person, not too low, but I'm below the line. But I've created a business that's about above the line business. It's all about people. So we're very adept as humans at working with our personality to push out of our comfort zones. Moving on to the S, this is about pace, steadiness. Above the line S's, if that's what's in your profile, tend to be very kind of deliberate, methodical, accurate, steady. They're very sort of persistent in what they do. There's some good people words in there as well, you can see, but they're steady and slower typically. Lower S's, fast-paced, active, alert, restless typically. Find it hard to rest and not be as thorough because they're moving, and pace is their language. C, we've got above the line C, which are typically perfectionist, accurate. The higher the C goes, the more kind of obsessive they become about it, the more perfectionist they become. And they're very much thinkers, logical people. Below the line tend to be emotional, gut feel, intuitive people. And at the lowest point of the C, that can move into stubbornness and strong-willed potentially. Nothing's right or wrong, if you remember, about any of these areas. It's just about strengths and limitations. So if you remember, above the line really is about working strengths, below the line supporting factors. We have to have some supporting factors to help us deliver on our working strengths. There's no good or bad in this. There's no judgment in it. It's just about telling the story of your personality. And if you remember, we tell that story through the perspective of 3 lenses down the bottom here. Your self-image, what you're like at your most relaxed, maybe the core part of your personality is self-image. Work mask, what happens when you come to work? You can see this individual as an example here changes reasonably significantly at work. Their D stays in a pretty much similar place. Their I comes up, they become more friendly when they come to work. The pace quickens up below the line on the C and they become faster at the job, and they go flick up C when they come to work, which is more accurate, precise and detailed, and then they change again under pressure. Did your profile show that you're a consistent profile? You're pretty much the same in work, out of work, under pressure, or did it show that there's changes in your personality? You could just make sure that you check in with your profile in a minute, and we will look at that in greater detail. Talking of context, there's 3 contexts that we're going to now look at over the next kind of 10 minutes or so. First of all, there's the me context, which is about me. It's about who I am. It's about my self-awareness, my self-development, how I need to change as an individual. Hopefully we've had that conversation with you at your PPA debrief, but we're just going to take a moment to help you think about what you can do personally to change, to become a better version of you, if we can suggest that. Then on the left-hand side, we've got you. This is now not about you at all, but it's about other people. It's about how other people's profiles are. What's their personality like? It's okay to be who you are, but what happens when you come to work or go home or go to that social kind of event at the weekend and you bump into somebody else? There's this interplay, as you can see, between me and between you, and that creates the we. And in a business context, that tends to be the play out of teams, where we have a number of individuals coming together collectively and they become a shared we together. So we're going to look at these 3 perspectives of me, you, and we. Let's just take a moment looking at me. We would have done a little bit of work with you, I hope, on the psychometric debrief to help you do that. But I just want to kind of bring your mind back to that, really, and take it back to a reflection about you. What was it in your report that you heard and saw that you agreed with? Our experiences, most people sort of intuitively say 80-90% of that is really spot on, really accurate, due to the algorithms and the way that the psychology has kind of been framed around Thomas International Profiling. They're pretty accurate, been validated by a number of universities now to say that. But what was it that you agreed with in your PPA debrief? What was it that challenged a view of you and yourself? What was it that you didn't like in the report that you read and you thought, no, I don't think that's me? And maybe it wasn't you, or maybe it was you and you just didn't like seeing that bit, or maybe you don't see that bit and you could have that pointed out by your partner or somebody in your team. No, I really do think you are like that. Wow, I didn't realise I came across like that. Maybe it's just me that gets that feedback every now and again. What was it that gave you reasons for adjustment and change? You know, maybe you were a low D and the business needs you to be a higher D, to be out there getting more business, driving the business forward now that you're a team leader or a manager. Maybe there's changes here in a role that you've just stepped into that were about you making some adjustments to your standard disc profiling, as it were. I just mentioned a moment ago about the difference between you, self, work, under pressure, those 3 different profiles. Are they what the business needs, or do you need to make bigger and better changes in the workplace in terms of your personality? So does your personality profile fit with the job that you're doing, particularly if you've moved into something new? And then we're just moving into now the final or second to last bullet point, really, there, about thinking about outside of work. So what about in other contexts? What about your profile when it's at home? What about when it's in a sporting setting or in a social setting? How does your personality play out? And what happens when me becomes us and I start to bump into others, the interplay of relationship between me and you that becomes us? I'd like to encourage you just to kind of pause the video now, if you would, and take a moment to reflect on me, on you. What is it that needs to change? What is it that's good that needs to stay? Almost maybe flick your PPA over and write a SWOT analysis. What was it we told you and your report tells you about your strengths? Maybe you're a really high I, a great people person, and you bring that to the business. Maybe you are above the line on the S, and you're really systematic and steady and thorough, a real reliable, dependable person in the team. All of these areas that are strengths for you. But what are the weaknesses? Maybe the business needs you to stop being so much a high S and to start move below the line, to bring your pace up and start to work more, speed kind of coming in, etc. Maybe the business needs you to be less purist up the top with the high C and more pragmatic down the bottom C. What are those areas for development? And dare I suggest, what are the threats in your personality? I'll give you one example. If you're a very strong flick down C, there's nothing wrong with that. But very strong flick down Cs tend to go into emotion and opinion and can be strong-willed and stubborn. That's not bad, but that's a risk to the business if we don't manage it. So am I aware of that risk? How do I mitigate against that risk? What do I need to do that's different? Equally, the high Cs There's risk there. Pedantic, pernickety, really picky in certain areas. That's the risk of the high C. There's always risks with our personalities. Take a moment to think about how that might need to change in you. Just a final few reflections on you particularly, and then we'll get on to others. What is it you need to change personally in terms of self-improvement? I've just covered that, I think, probably on the previous slide. How about job role? Have you moved recently into a new job role? Is your business scaling up? And as a result of that, you're going to need to bring your high D&I up a little bit more. You're going to need to be more dominant, more influential. The pace is going to need to quicken maybe a little bit. But maybe the business is needing you now to manage a team. And your low I skills are going to need to move up above the line skills, because you can't be an introvert in the same way leading a team necessarily. So how does the business need your profile to change, and what does that look like when it fits with us together? What are the opportunities here to kind of, as it were, visit the other side? So if you are a low I, why don't you stretch out and try being above the line I, being a little bit more talkative, positive, energized, more charisma, and kind of, imagine what that might look like in that meeting that you've got coming up next Thursday. How could I play out a higher I in that meeting? What would that look like to do that authentically? And then play it out next Thursday in the meeting. And then after the meeting, reflect on, what did that feel like? Did that feel really awkward? Or actually, no, I felt quite comfortable within that role that I was playing. So practice these things. We're very good. Our emotional intelligence, for many of us, is areas that we can use to develop our personality and change our personality. We are incredible human beings, as the slide says. We have this natural ability to be able to change our personality. So what is it that needs to change in you? Where does that change need to happen? And what are the practicalities? Be really smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relative time band in that. What could you do to make the changes that you need to? So really the last couple of slides is about you and the changes that could be made out of your PPA. So just pause the video again if you would. Take your PPA, your SWOT analysis. What is it that could change going forward? Could you be brave in sharing those changes with your manager or somebody that's trusted within your organisation? There's something about saying the changes that you're going to make that make you more accountable. Who will you be accountable to in the changes that you need to make? Secondly, we're moving into you. This is talking about others now. And so most of you have had PPAs. If you've had them in an organisation that has had a number of PPAs, have now got a tremendous opportunity to go and look at other PPAs. So go and look at your peers, go and look at people in your team, go and look at your manager's PPA. Most organisations are quite comfortable with having those as a transparent tool within the organisation. So why not take some time to go and chase out other people's PPAs? You've done some reflection on you. Now what does it mean when you look at others and other people's PPAs? Who are you going to talk to? What kind of feedback do you want from those individuals? Maybe it's your manager, your peers, people in your team. What is it that you want to say about your PPA? How could you crystallise that into a very simple sentence of who you are, but also who they are, and what happens when we compare and contrast those PPAs together? What does the bump between you and me look like? If you're a super high D and you're managing lots of people that are low D, is that okay? Or is that a problem? Do they need to come your way? Do you need to come down more their way? There's this interplay between, I understand who I am, but when that lands in a team context, we need to now start to work out what that looks like in terms of difference. And I want to challenge you really around difference. There's a lot being written about that at the moment. And there's two ways to look at this. Either if you were above the line and other people that you're working with are below the line, you could argue that's a yin to the yang, and there's a really healthy tension and difference there around the difference that we need in the business. I think in the kind of challenging environment that we work in these days in business, there's a real need for breadth and coverage across the business. We can't have clones, as Matthew Sire talks about in his book, Rebel Ideas. We can't have people just who are all of the same ilk, covering the same spread in the business. We need breadth and depth and people of difference. And that means being brave and recruiting people that are different to you, people who look and sound and act and think differently. So that's one opportunity that we've got. When you look at others' PPAs, is there difference or is there similarity? With similarities, you get good thinking together. Maybe there's a real strength of opinion when we're of a similar ilk. But you can equally get what we call groupthink, people that just start to cluster together and just reaffirm everybody's ideas because they don't want to break the mold and step outside of the norm. So have a think about difference in team and the power that there is indifference. Again, recommend this book, Matthew Syed, Rebel Ideas. It's a great book to get that will really challenge you about the need to break away from similar into something that's different for the sake of the business. Thirdly and finally, we're going to talk about us. So this is about the collective us now as a team. It's not just about my interplay with an individual. This is about collectively us as a team. And I'm hoping that you're part of an organisation that's had the privilege of having team reports, which you can see on the right hand side here. You can see there's only 3 people in this example team report, but what it does is show all of their individual team report shapes, and then it shows what that looks like when we crunch this team together. So you can see this team, for instance, are a little bit lower on the D. You've got this individual here called Training Demo, who's the highest one on the D. Classically, that might be the leader of the team, who knows? But everybody else, the other 2 people, are below the line on the D. That brings that D down a little bit and means that as a team, they're not as dominant, forceful, strong as possibly they could be. Is that what the business needs? Does the business need things to be different? On the I, you can see these three people are pretty strong on their people skills. All of them have got either above the line I's, or Jane Brown at the end is on the line on the I. So it's a very strong people team. That's great. It'll be good with relationships, good at winning new business. But typically people above the line sometimes don't do the deep thinking, the thoughtful stuff, the introverted, analytical kind of stuff below the line. This team's super fast. I mean, by gum, look at their S's. Everybody's under the line on the S. So we've got a real pace going on here with the team. So it's super fast as a team. But again, what do we lose? We lose above the line on the S. So we lose thorough, systematic, steady, pace. That's what we're losing here. It's all about pace for this team, which is good, but also challenging when we don't have any above the S line there as a challenge. And then this team's in the bottom right-hand corner space. So have a look at your team report. What's the strengths of your team report? You'll see that there's a section that is team strengths, as you can see on the screen here. But then page 2 talks about team limitations. What's the gaps in this team? And I would challenge you, what's your role in the gap? If you've got a team report where it says there's team limitations, are you just going to leave that to others in the organisation to plug those weaknesses? Or is there a responsibility that you've got to step into that space and plug that weakness kind of thing? What are the areas that need to change in terms of limitations? You'll see in the team report there's a section around the potential for conflict. If you've got lots of people with high Ds, there'll be a greater potential for conflict. There was a team report I was debriefing on the other day, and everybody in the team, bar one person out of this team of 13, was in the potential for conflict. I mean, that's really exciting when you look at the potential for energy and conflict and creation of new ideas, but it's clearly a huge challenge in terms of the potential for the sparks to go off and there be a challenge on that. So who's in that area for conflict for you? Maybe you don't have anybody. Maybe there's nobody in your section that says that there's a potential for conflict, but have a look for that. Then finally, you'll see on the team report this little kind of image that's down the bottom here. There'll be more on the one that you've got. And it describes the individuals in the team as characteristics. So you've got the anchor, the pioneer, the specialist, the motivator, the analyzer, the innovator, the concluder, the supporter, and the networker. And they're a little bit like Belbin roles, if you've come across Belbin roles before. I'm not going to describe them because when you go to the team report, you'll be able to see them and the descriptors of them. But example, this individual that we're calling Training Demo is very much the pioneer. That's the person that would be out there creating new markets, getting new business. We've got one person who's a specializer, who's the detailed, accurate, precise, classically low I, high S type person. We've got the motivator, the team worker, this individual that we're calling Training Demo 2, that's very much working on team and motivation. And so we could go on through the rest of these areas as well. But you can see with this example team that's on the screen, we've got gaps in concluder and supporter. We've got nobody that's doing the completer finishing role, and that's a weakness in the team. And if you've got that in your team report, then the challenge to you is, are you going to step into that space and plug some of those gaps where there might be on the concluders or supporters as an example there. So we can encourage you to look at your team report, look at the weaknesses, the team's limitations. What is your role, responsibility in assisting in plugging those team limitations? Is there an area for conflict in your team, and are you named in that area of conflict? And thirdly, role profiles, as you can see on the screen bottom right. Is there gaps in your team's profile that you could potentially fill? That's areas for development when we look at us as a team. You'll see in the team report that you'll have a 2-page summary personally at the back of the team report that suggests personal adjustments. It suggests areas that you could change and develop on, but there's a little bit of caution around that. The Thomas International team reports only say that the things that you need to change relate to the team working more cohesively together. And I want to challenge that and say life in business is not just about having a team that works beautifully together. It's actually about delivering what the business needs. So sometimes what the business needs is not for you just to fit in better with the team, but for you to be a rebel in the team and step outside of the team and bring a different energy, as I've suggested to you in the previous slides there. So have a think, be sensible about that. Don't just change in the way that the report's saying that you need to change, because all that will give you is better team synergy. And sometimes that's not what's needed. The business needs something else. It needs creativity and innovation and spark, and that comes from difference rather than similarity. Let's just bring that all together now in a reflection at the end. Any of those sections of the video you can go back over and pause and just reflect and do some work on. It's really important that you pause at this stage and capture some actions rather than just racing straight back into work, if you wouldn't mind. So what are the changes that you personally need to make? What is your SWOT? What's those areas of threats? What's the opportunities that you've got going forward? Just crystallize those for us, if you would. Secondly, when we look at you, what are the differences in other people? Who are those people that you work with? Your manager, your peers, people in your team. What are their profiles like? And what might be the opportunity for better cohesion or better difference? What needs to change in my relationship with others, with them? And finally, we together. What does your team report say? If you've got a team report, if you haven't got a team report, unfortunately, you're going to have to do that analysis yourself. You haven't got it simply done for you by Thomas International. We can obviously run a team report if that's what you want, but you'll need to do that work of translating it together yourself. But what happens when we bring all of us as individuals together into a we? What does the business have? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats? What does it need in terms of where it's going as a business going forward, and what needs to change? You can see there's a QR code in the middle. If you want to snap that, that will take you to our website, where there's a whole raft of resources there that will help you in this personal development that maybe you've got to make. For instance, if you realise that you're a low I and you need to spend more time in that space of influence, but you're not quite sure how to do it because it's not a natural skill that you've got, contact us, be in touch with us. The contact details are on the right there, and we'll send you some articles or a link to a podcast or a video that might tell you how you can develop and get that I up in terms of influence. So do be in touch with us. Have a look at the resources that we've got on our website and continue to work on that personal development. What we want is organisations that collectively together have strong individuals, team focus, so that they can deliver the business in a much more cohesive, effective way. And in the crazy world that we live, that means that we can't remain static, in our opinion. We have to keep evolving, changing as individuals, as relationships, and as teams together to get to where the business needs us to be. So I hope that little video has been useful. Do stay in touch with us if there's anything we can do for you, but we look forward to hearing about how you've changed to make businesses much more successful. Thanks for listening. Bye.